The arena lights dimmed slowly, like curtains falling on an old theater stage. A hush swept across the massive crowd in Chicago. Then a wave of energy surged back as the spotlight landed on one man. Michael Jordan, dressed in a tailored dark suit, walked onto the stage with that same stride the world remembered from his playing days. Confident, steady, and larger than life. The roar that erupted was deafening. Thousands rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, even chanting his name, MJ, MJ, MJ. It felt less like a charity event and more like the fourth quarter of a championship game. Even now, long retired, Michael commanded the stage like nobody else could. The event was simple. A charity Q&A to raise funds for youth programs in Chicago. Dozens of kids and families filled the front rows, their eyes shining as if staring at a living superhero. Behind them, business leaders, athletes, and celebrities filled the seats. Cameras flashed. Broadcasters whispered commentary. Everyone expected to hear classic Jordan stories about championships, rivalries, maybe even a joke or two about his infamous trash talk. Michael reached the podium, smiling. His deep voice rolled across the microphone. "Thank you, Chicago. It's always good to be home." Applause thundered again. For a few minutes, the mood was light, warm, even nostalgic. He talked about the foundation, about giving back, about how basketball had given him everything. But beneath that surface, something else hung in the air. The night wasn't going to stay light. There was something waiting in the wings, something that would shift the energy from applause to silence, from nostalgia to raw emotion. When the host invited the audience to line up at the microphone for questions, dozens of kids jumped to their feet. Little hands waved. Parents urged them forward. Michael chuckled, pointing toward the row of eager children. "All right, let's hear from the future stars." The first few questions were what everyone expected. Who was the toughest player you ever faced? What's your favorite championship? Michael answered with his trademark charm, mixing wisdom with humor. The audience laughed, clapped, and leaned in for more. Then, as the spotlight shifted to the next question, a boy no older than 11 stepped nervously to the mic. His clothes were simple, his voice small. He adjusted the microphone stand with trembling hands, and for a moment the crowd chuckled softly at his shyness. Michael gave him a reassuring nod. "Take your time, young man." The boy swallowed hard, his eyes locked on Michael's. And then, in a voice so honest it cut through the noise of the arena, he asked, "Mr. Jordan, do you ever get lonely after winning everything?" The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. The crowd froze. You could almost hear the heartbeat of the arena. No one expected that. Not from a child. Not in this setting. Michael's face stiffened. His smile faded. He gripped the podium with both hands, suddenly still. For the first time all evening, he had no answer ready. The silence was heavy, uncomfortable, stretching longer and longer. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every detail of his expression. The flicker of pain in his eyes, the way his jaw tightened. Everyone came here to hear basketball stories. Nobody expected this. And yet, in that single moment, everyone in the arena knew. This night was no longer about basketball. It was about something much deeper, something raw, human, and unforgettable. But nobody knew just how far that one innocent question would take them. The boy's question hung in the air like smoke after a firework. Sharp, surprising, impossible to ignore. "Do you ever get lonely after winning everything?" For a second, Michael Jordan didn't move. The arena, once roaring with cheers, now felt as if someone had pressed mute. The boy's voice still echoed in the minds of thousands. Lonely, winning everything, lonely. Michael finally looked down at the child, his eyes narrowing slightly, not out of anger but out of deep thought. He wasn't used to being caught off guard. Reporters had tried for years to dig under his armor, but he always had an answer ready, a story to deflect, a smile to disarm. But this was different. Coming from a child, it pierced through his defenses in a way no journalist ever could. The host shifted uneasily, almost stepping in to redirect. But Michael raised a hand gently, signaling him to wait. He wanted to hear this boy out. The crowd sat in frozen anticipation. Parents glanced at each other nervously, as if wondering if the question had crossed a line. Celebrities in the back leaned forward, sensing something extraordinary was about to unfold. Even the kids in the front row, who moments earlier were giggling and whispering, now stared silently at the boy and the legend before him. Michael's throat tightened. He reached for the water bottle at his podium, twisted the cap, and took a slow sip, more to buy time than to quench thirst. He lowered the bottle, his hands clasping the podium again, this time more firmly, as though steadying himself. Finally he spoke, but not with an answer. His voice was lower, slower, filled with an edge of vulnerability the public rarely saw. "Son, what made you ask me that?" The boy shifted nervously but spoke with the kind of blunt honesty only children possess. "Because everyone says you have everything. Money, trophies, fans. But sometimes, I think people who look like they have everything might still be sad." Gasps rippled softly through the audience. A grandmother in the front row dabbed her eyes. An NBA rookie in the back shook his head in disbelief. The innocence of the boy's words felt heavier than any scripted question ever could. Michael's lips pressed into a thin line. His mind flashed to moments he rarely let himself remember. Empty hotel rooms after victories, the silence of private jets, the absence of his father's voice in the stands. Loneliness had always followed him, a shadow just beyond the spotlight. And here it was, dragged into the open by a child's voice. The silence deepened. Camera crews captured every angle, but nobody dared interrupt. Michael leaned slightly forward, his gaze fixed on the boy. His voice cracked ever so slightly as he repeated, almost to himself, "Lonely after winning everything." The host tried to step in again, his voice shaky. Thank you, young man, for that very thoughtful question. Maybe we'll move." But Michael shook his head firmly. "No, let him stay. I need to answer this." The crowd shifted, sensing they were witnessing something rare, something raw. Phones discreetly recorded. Families clutched each other's hands. Michael took a deep breath, but no words came yet. His eyes lifted, gazing past the crowd, almost as if searching the rafters for strength. He paused again, and in that pause the tension only grew thicker. Everyone expected Michael Jordan to tell stories about championships. Instead, he was about to tell a story about being human. And no one in that arena, not even Michael himself, knew what was going to come out next. The boy's words seemed to echo endlessly. "Do you ever get lonely after winning everything?" Michael Jordan gripped the podium tighter, as if it were an anchor keeping him steady in a storm. The arena, thousands of people, had fallen utterly silent. No coughs, no whispers, no shuffling of feet, just stillness, the kind of silence that makes you hyper-aware of your own heartbeat. Michael lowered his gaze. His lips pressed together, his jaw tight. He had been asked about championships, rivalries, even scandals, but never this. Not so bluntly, not so innocently. He glanced at the boy again. The child's eyes were wide, filled not with judgment but with curiosity, maybe even empathy. And that innocence made the question harder to brush aside. Michael could have laughed it off, given a polished answer, shifted the attention back to the game. But something inside him refused. The crowd leaned forward in their seats. Camera operators zoomed in, sensing this was no ordinary pause. Even the host fidgeted nervously, ready to jump in, but Michael lifted his hand slightly, a subtle signal to wait. For several long seconds, the arena seemed suspended in time. People held their breath. A legend was wrestling with his own silence. Inside Michael's mind, memories stirred like shadows he had tried to bury. He remembered parades where millions cheered his name, followed by hotel rooms so quiet he could hear the hum of the air conditioner. He remembered the champagne showers in locker rooms, and then the stillness afterward, when everyone went home to their families and he was left with his thoughts. The silence stretched on. It was uncomfortable, but it was also magnetic. The more he didn't speak, the more people leaned in, desperate to know what he was thinking. Michael finally inhaled deeply, but when he tried to speak, his voice caught. He paused again, blinking rapidly. His throat felt tight, his chest heavier with every passing second. He whispered into the mic, almost too softly to hear, "That's a powerful question." A ripple went through the crowd, relief that he had spoken, awe at the gravity of his tone. But instead of answering right away, Michael looked down at his hands. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the podium. He was buying time, yes, but he was also fighting something inside, the instinct to protect his image versus the need to tell the truth. His eyes lifted toward the rafters of the arena, where championship banners hung proudly, 6 titles immortalized. He stared at them as though they were mocking him, reminding him of victories that came with hidden costs. The silence returned, thicker now. You could feel the weight of thousands of people watching, waiting, not daring to move. Parents hugged their children tighter. Athletes in the crowd shifted uncomfortably in their seats, recognizing the war behind his eyes. Finally, Michael leaned toward the mic again. His voice was steadier, but lower, as if confiding in the entire arena. "You know, sometimes the hardest questions come from the smallest voices." He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to, not yet. The audience felt the storm building. They knew the answer was coming, but they didn't know what form it would take. And that was the brilliance and the pain of the silence. It wasn't empty. It was filled with tension, memory, and a legend teetering between the mask of greatness and the reality of being human. The boy's question still hung in the air, unanswered. But the silence itself had become the first part of Michael's answer. Michael stood there, his hands tightening on the podium as if it were the only thing keeping him steady. The boy's question, so simple, so direct, had ripped open doors he usually kept locked. For a man celebrated as the ultimate competitor, the greatest winner of all time, memories had a way of whispering a darker truth. He took another long pause, and for the first time the crowd didn't mind. They leaned in, hungry to hear what he would reveal. Michael's eyes softened, his gaze turning somewhere far away, beyond the walls of the arena. "You know," he began slowly, "there are moments you don't forget, no matter how many trophies you win." And with those words, the floodgates of memory opened. He remembered the day in 1993 when he got the call. His father, James Jordan, had been murdered. The championship parades, the champagne celebrations, the flashing cameras. None of it mattered in that moment. Michael recalled standing in his home, trophies glistening in the corner, but all he felt was emptiness. His voice grew quieter, almost trembling. "I was on top of the world, but at the same time, my world had just fallen apart." The audience was motionless. Every pair of eyes was locked on him. He remembered the long nights in hotel rooms after big wins, the roar of the crowd still ringing in his ears, followed by silence so heavy it pressed on his chest. Reporters wrote about his victories, but they never saw him sitting alone in the dark, replaying moments he wished he could change. Another flashback burned in his mind. The gambling controversies, headlines questioning his integrity. Strangers judged him, critics mocked him, and yet not one of them knew the weight he carried when the lights went off. Michael looked back at the boy, his eyes glistening. "You see, son, people cheer for you when you're winning. But when the arena empties, when the lights go out, you're just left with yourself. And sometimes, that's the hardest part." The words hung heavy. You could feel the arena collectively holding its breath. Then another memory surfaced, his kids. Michael spoke about missing birthdays, school plays, simple family dinners. The very victories that made him immortal in the eyes of fans had sometimes cost him moments that were irreplaceable. "I've held trophies in my hands," he admitted. "But sometimes I wish I'd held my children a little longer instead." Gasps echoed softly in the room. A woman in the audience covered her mouth. Even the seasoned athletes sitting in the back looked shaken. They knew what it meant to sacrifice, but hearing it from Michael Jordan himself made it cut deeper. His voice slowed, weighted with truth. "Winning gave me the world, but it also took things from me I can never get back." The boy's eyes widened, his small hands clutching the microphone stand as if holding up the weight of the question he had dared to ask. Michael looked around the arena, scanning thousands of faces, and for the first time that night, he wasn't the legend on the pedestal. He was a man A father, a son, a human being wrestling with regret and love all at once. The silence was so complete it almost felt sacred. Every person knew they were witnessing something rare, something real. Michael Jordan wasn't just answering a question. He was peeling back the armor of greatness and letting the world see the scars beneath. And as he stood there, lost in memories, one truth became painfully clear. Even legends can feel alone. The silence that had gripped the arena broke not with noise, but with the sound of sniffles. A woman in the second row pulled a tissue from her purse and dabbed her eyes. A young man in a Bulls jersey buried his face in his hands, shoulders shaking. All around, people were crying, quietly, uncontrollably, as if Michael Jordan's tears had unlocked their own. For years, fans had seen him as untouchable, a symbol of dominance and perfection. But now, watching him crumble under the weight of his truth, they saw something far more powerful, a reflection of themselves. Michael tried to steady himself, but the sight of the boy still standing bravely at the microphone overwhelmed him again. He stepped away from the podium, walked down the stage steps, and approached the child directly. The boy's eyes widened, but he didn't move. Michael bent down on one knee so they were face to face. His voice trembled, but his words carried across the arena. "Son, thank you for asking me what no one else ever dared to. You gave me a chance to say what I've carried for years." The boy's lips quivered, his own eyes filling with tears. "I didn't mean to make you sad," he whispered. Michael placed a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. "You didn't make me sad. You made me real. And sometimes, that's what we all need." The crowd erupted, not in cheers, but in the sound of muffled sobs and heartfelt applause. Parents pulled their children into tight embraces. Fathers kissed their daughters' foreheads. Mothers stroked their sons' hair. The entire arena seemed to transform into one giant family, bound together by the rawness of the moment. Even the celebrities and athletes in attendance were moved beyond words. A well-known NBA player in the front row wiped his eyes, whispering to his wife, "I never thought I'd see this man cry. Not like this." A former coach in the back row lowered his head, whispering a prayer of gratitude for the lesson unfolding before him. On the big screens above the court, the camera zoomed in on faces throughout the crowd, young, old, rich, poor, all united by the same tears. For once, the arena wasn't divided by wins and losses, teams or rivalries. It was united by shared humanity. Michael remained kneeling beside the boy, but now his arm wrapped gently around him. The boy leaned into the embrace, and the sight of the world's greatest athlete holding a child with such tenderness shattered whatever composure the crowd had left. A wave of sobs rolled across the seats like a ripple on water. He looked back up at the thousands watching, his tear-streaked face no longer trying to hide behind strength. "You see this boy?" he said softly. "He reminded me tonight that greatness isn't about trophies. It's about truth. And the truth is, we all hurt, we all struggle, we all get lonely. But when we share it, when we connect like this, we heal." The applause was different this time. It wasn't thunderous like at the start of the night. It was slower, softer, like a heartbeat. People clapping through tears, each clap echoing sincerity, not spectacle. In that moment, the arena wasn't just a place where a legend spoke. It became a sanctuary of vulnerability, where every soul felt permission to let go of their own burdens. And at the center of it all stood Michael Jordan, not the champion, not the global icon, but the man, embracing a boy, embracing the truth, and unknowingly embracing the hearts of thousands all at once. The arena was still buzzing with emotion. People wiped their faces, holding onto the moment as if afraid it might slip away. Michael slowly stood up, helping the boy step back from the microphone. He placed a hand on the child's shoulder one last time before walking back toward the stage. Each step felt heavier yet freer. For decades, Michael Jordan had carried the weight of being the greatest of all time. Tonight, in front of thousands, he had laid it down. Back at the podium, he took a long breath, scanning the crowd. His voice, though soft, carried across the room with a clarity that felt unshakable. When people talk about me, they talk about points, championships, MVPs, and I'm grateful for all of that. But tonight, I realize something. None of it matters if I can't also be remembered as a man who cared. A man who wasn't afraid to be human. Applause swelled, but this time it wasn't about celebrity worship. It was about gratitude. Gratitude for honesty, vulnerability, and the reminder that even heroes feel pain. Michael's gaze swept over the children in the front rows. If you're young and you're chasing your dreams, remember this. Greatness isn't in the trophies you win. It's in the people you inspire, the lives you touch, the love you share. Don't ever let the world tell you that success means being untouchable. The truth is, being human is the greatest success of all. The words hit like waves, washing over every listener. Parents nodded. Kids sat up straighter. Fans whispered to each other that they would never forget this night. Michael paused, his face softening again. To the boy who asked me that question, thank you. You gave me a chance to remember who I really am. And maybe, just maybe, you helped a lot of us in this room remember who we are, too. The boy stood frozen in his seat, his cheeks red, his eyes wet, but his heart full. He had walked into that arena as just another kid with a question. He was leaving as the boy who made Michael Jordan break down and the world cry with him. The crowd rose to its feet in a standing ovation. Not the roaring, thunderous kind of Jordan's playing days, but the kind that comes from reverence. A slow, steady applause that grew louder and louder until it filled every corner of the arena. Michael stepped back from the microphone, bowed his head slightly, and whispered, "Thank you." The lights brightened, the cameras panned, but no one would ever see Michael Jordan the same way again. He wasn't just the man who flew, who won 6 rings, who dominated the game. He was the man who showed his tears, who admitted his loneliness, who reminded the world that even legends are human. And that became his legacy beyond basketball. His was more than a question. It was a moment that stripped away the myth and revealed the man. Michael Jordan, the greatest on the court, showed us tonight that true greatness lies in honesty, in vulnerability, and in the courage to let the world see your heart. Fire if this story moved you. Share it with someone who needs hope today. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a moment that could change the way you see the world.